Good day, people. I am Philosophy Nina, and this is the new episode of Philosophy Knows. So last time, we talked about Gabriel Marcel and the intersubjectivity of man. Today, before I introduce to you our new philosopher, I would like to tell a joke about 18th century philosophers. But I just can't. I would like to ask you a question instead. What did the moral relativist say about the moral objectivist? I can't stand you! So I guess you have an idea on whose philosophy we will be talking about today. The Philosophy of Man by Immanuel Kant. I recently saw this meme on social media. It says, I want to stop philosophizing, but I can't. Makes sense. Moving on, let's proceed to the life of Immanuel Kant. On April 22, 1724, Immanuel Kant was born in Königsberg, Prussia, also known as Kaliningrad, Russia. Kant lived in the remote province where he was born for his entire life. His father, Johann George Kant, a saddler, was, according to Kant, a descendant of a Scottish immigrant, although scholars have found no basis for this claim. Meanwhile, his mother Regina Dorothea Ruther, an uneducated German woman, was remarkable for her character and natural intelligence. Both parents were devoted followers of Pietist branch of Lutheran Church, which taught that religion belongs to the inner life expressed in simplicity and obedience to moral law. Kant was the fourth of 9 children, but the eldest surviving child. Through the help of their pastor, he was able to obtain education. At the age of 8, Kant entered the Pietist school, a Latin school his pastor directed. This is when he acquired lifelong love for the Latin classics, especially for the naturalistic poet Lucretius. In 1740, he enrolled in the University of Königsberg as a theological student. But, although he attended courses in theology and even preached on a few occasions, he was principally attracted to mathematics and physics. He was also an enthusiast for the science of Sir Isaac Newton. Year 1746, Kant's father died, leaving them without income. Because of this, he was forced to leave the university and work as a tutor for a decade to wealthy families. During this time, he published several papers dealing with scientific questions, exploring the middle ground between rationalism and empiricism. Toward the end of his life, he became increasingly antisocial and bitter over the growing loss of his memory and capacity for work. Kant became totally blind and finally died on February 12, 1804 in Königsberg. the end of his life. After a short break, we will be discussing about his philosophies.
Ano ang definition mo ng adulting?
Adulting for me means developing a sense of responsibility.
Adulting, siguro kung mas prefer mo na lang mag-stay sa bahay, matulog, kaysa makipag-socialize sa labas. Ganun.
Para sa akin ng adulting, proseso siya ng pag-alam ng tama at mali.
Para sa akin, ang adulting ay isang proseso tungo sa maturity kung saan nagkakaroon ng mas malawak na pagpapakahulugan yung isang tao sa mga nangyayari sa kanya.
Para sa akin, ang adulting is pagiging malaya ka. Pero aside from that, syempre, pagkakaroon din ng responsibility dun sa freedom na meron ka.
Ano ang pera para sa'yo?
Pera para sa akin isang mahalagang bagay kasi hindi dapat ito nawawala sa bulsa ko kasi ito yung bagay na kailangan ko araw-araw. Paglabas pa lang ng bahay, madami nang bibilin, madami nang kailangan bilhin. Kaya ito dapat yung hindi nawawala sa bulsa ko.
Money for me is just a thing that we need to satisfy our needs and wants.
Ang pera, mahalaga siya sa tao, pero para sa akin, hindi siya yung pinakamahalaga. Meron pang mga ibang bagay na bukod doon na mas dapat pinapahalagahan. Ano ang pakiramdam maging bata?
Pakiramdam maging bata, syempre masaya.
Yung pakiramdam as pagiging child or pagiging bata is para sa akin masaya tsaka enjoyable, unforgettable moment siya para sa akin. Kasi syempre, nagagawa mo yung mga gusto mo, tas hindi lang, kahit na may limited yun, masaya ka sa ginagawa mo kasi mababaw lang yung gusto mo.
Masaya kasi free ka, tapos madami kang free time, konti lang yung problema, konti lang yung schoolworks, di ka tulad ngayon, gano'n.
Being a child feels like you have an infinite freedom. In terms of dreams, you are free to dream whatever you want without thinking how will you achieve that dream.
Pagiging bata is sobrang saya. Tipong wala ka nang iniisip, walang problemang iniisip. Para ngayon na nag-a-adulting ka na, madami nang iniisip, madami nang problemang kailangan gampanan, madami nang responsibilidad.
Masaya maging bata kasi nakakapaglaro at wala pa gaanong problema. Tsaka unti-unti mo palang nadidiscover yung mga bagay-bagay. May dream ka ba sa buhay at ano ito?
Bilang estudyante, syempre dream ko makapagtapos at matulungan din yung pamilya ko.
Dream ko sa buhay is makapagtapos ng pag-aaral at maging isang ganap na CPA at mabigyan ng magandang buhay yung pamilya ko.
Naging CPA na ako, tapos nababalik ko na yung nakakatulong na ako sa parents mo, sa family ko.
My only dream for now is to have my college diploma and to find a job where I can excel and where I can apply my knowledge.
Ano ang love para sa'yo? Siguro para sa akin yung love is yung pagiging hindi makasarili. Kung saan patuloy na pinipili yung pinakamabuti para sa lahat or para sa marami.
Ano ang love para sa'yo?
Love is knowing and valuing others' worth and respecting them. Yun lang.
Ano ang love para sa'yo?
For me, it means caring for someone without expecting anything in return.
Ano ang love para sa'yo?
Ang love para sa ating lahat yan kasi nagsisilbing tulay yan para sa kasiyahan ng lahat.
Ano ang love para sa'yo?
Love para sa akin is yung continuous commitment ko sa isang bagay o isang tao.
Ano ang love para sa'yo?
Ang love para sa akin ay yung sa family ko tsaka sa friends ko kasi natatanggap ko sa kanila sa ngayon.
we're back, people. We had discussed Immanuel Kant's life a while ago. This time, we will talk about Immanuel Kant's philosophy. The philosophy of Immanuel Kant can be divided into two major branches. His theoretical philosophy, which includes metaphysics, it is based on the rational understanding of the concept of nature. The second, his practical philosophy, comprising ethics and political philosophy. It is based on the concept of freedom. Both of these branches have been enormously influential in the subsequent history of philosophy. Are you ready to know his philosophy? Now, we will talk about the Kantian concept of morality, deontologism. It came from the Greek word deontos, which means duty, and logos, which means study. In other words, it is the study of human's duty. The Kantian ethics emphasizes duty and obligation. For Kant, duty is equals to obligation. Morality is within the human person. What is morally right or wrong is solely a matter of intent or motive or will. How do we know if it is right or wrong? The answer to that is deontologism. Deontologism is a theory which uses rules to identify or distinguish the rightness and wrongness of an action made, and that would be decided by a certain person. The action's goodness or badness will depend on internal motive or intention of the human person to do such actions. The theory of deontology states that we are morally obligated to act in accordance with a certain set of principles and rules regardless of the outcome. In religious deontology, the principles are derived from divine commandment, so that under religious laws, we are morally obligated not to steal, lie, or cheat. Deontologists believe that the goal of moral philosophy should be to figure out the rules for living a moral life, and that once people know those rules, they should follow them. For instance, the Golden Rule. It is an example of deontology. It is a moral rule meant to be followed in all situations for everyone to live a moral life. Another example, we all believe that killing someone is wrong. So, if a person kills another person, even if it was a self-defense, would it still be wrong? For the person who killed, it is not wrong because it is based on her intention and motive, which is to protect herself from that person. However, other people do not consider this kind of act or reason because killing is immoral and will never be acceptable to anybody. In relation to deontologism, Kant distinguished between acts done in accord with duty from an act done from a sense of duty. For example, in helping the homeless, with acting in accord with duty, his action of helping them or giving them money may be good, but his intention of doing it may not be totally good. When an acting from a sense of duty, his action of helping the homeless is pure. Here, it recognizes one's obligation, and the essence of morality is to be found from the motive. In Kant's philosophy, the question is there a test for determining what a person's duty will be under a particular set of circumstances? According to Kant, a human must test the universalizability of an action. The universalizability principle. According to Kant, act only according to that maxim which you can at the same time will that it should be become a universal law without contradiction. This Kantian principle is stating that if a course of action cannot be universally adopted, it must be morally unacceptable. Universalizability is evident by imaging a world in which any proposed action is also adopted by everyone else. It obligates an individual to ask himself the maxim of his action, and to determine the general rule that comprises his action. In this principle, Kant centers on reasoning that it is not fair to make exceptions for yourself. Individuals are never permitted to violate moral law, even if many others are doing so, even if you intend to do it for a good cause. In other words, in the universalizability principle, Kant is proposing that an individual, before doing any action, should first evaluate its rightness and acceptability. If his action could be done also by other people and it could not harm nor violate anyone, then it should be considered as a universal action. One should never make an exception for himself, for there must be a sense of equality among everyone. Even if no one is looking or would have an idea on what are you going to do, always choose to act in accordance with the moral laws. An act of violation in any sense is not acceptable. Individuals should always conform to the moral laws.
Guys, gutom na ako. Gutom na ako.
Ito na? Kakakain lang namin, hindi sa mga naglaro.
Hindi ako nakakain. Wala akong kinain sa bahay.
Hindi ko alam ka na. Hindi ako sa kumain ko ako.
Hindi na lang.
Lola mo. Ay, hindi siya na. Hindi na. Ito, wala yan. Wala. Oh, walang kids. Okay. Ang basta mo yung pinapapang namin. Sila. Ito, walang kaso. Hindi kasi yung una niya, puro isang card. Kaya pag nag-super siya,
Kain na ako ha. Kain na ako.
sige. School bus. boring naman dito.
Kaya wala tayong magawa.
Oh, magpiatos muna kayo. Wow! Ang ganda! Isa pa, isa pa! Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ang init! Ano ba yan? Init? Isa pa! Sana malamig naman.
Sana.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Alam mo yan! Ang lamig!
Ba yung Gwen?
Wala! Wala lang, ha? Oh.
Piatos. Kung gusto mong maraming mapuntahan, bumili ka.
Next philosophy, the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant. Kant considered this as the only thing in the realm of morals that is definite in a relative and changing world. It is the unconditional moral obligation that we are intended to do regardless of our desires because it lays down under universal rule. It is a command that enjoins a person to do a certain action without qualification inasmuch as doing such an act is the most universality accepted thing to do. Kant gave two formulations in order to make a categorical imperative. Number 1, act as if the maxim of your action were to become a universal law of nature. We should determine first what general rule that stands behind that particular action.
Ma!
Ah!
May yung pera! Alis ako!
Nangihingi ka naman ng pera? Ano naman yun? Kakabigay ko lang sa'yo kahapon, ah!
May gala kami!
Gagala ka na naman, puro ka na ng gala, gala ka ng gala. Di mo ba iniisip na ang dami tayong bayarin dito sa bahay?
The second one, act so as to treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of any other, every case as an end, never as means only. An action is moral if the person does not use other merely as a means for advancing his or her own interest.
Daw po, Tito.
Ano pala?
Tito, may thesis kasi kami ngayon eh. Tapos, kailangan ko ng laptop. Tapos baka naman, pwede ko na silipin na humingi na rin ako ng printer. Okay lang ba?
Okay lang, basta mag-aaral ka lang mabuti.
Talaga, Tito?
Oo naman,
Salamat,
basta ikaw.
Tito.
According to Kant, there are three general types of imperative. Number 1, imperative of skill. Number 2, imperative of prudence. And number 3, imperative of morality. First, imperative of skill. These are actions or decisions that are based on the capacity or skills you have. It is necessary measure or means a person must take in view of the end or goal that he wishes to pursue. This is hypothetical and conditional because one will do something, achieve his goals. For example, your dream is to be an accountant because you have the ability to analyze problems. So you decided to study under ABM Strand in senior high school. The second one, imperative of prudence. Everyone's ultimate goal is to be happy, but before achieving something, we must go through a process of pain. It is the necessary measure or means that a human person, out of tact of practicality, must take if he wants to attain happiness. A goal in which, in Kant's view, all human people seek by natural inclination. It is considered as hypothetical and conditional because action depends on your goal. For example, a student's dream or goal is to be an honor student. For her to achieve that dream, she must study well, and she also needs to experience sleepless nights, a lot of schoolworks, and etc. Last but not the least, imperative of morality. The moral or universal law is the one that binds everyone. We don't need religion to determine what moral law is. It is considered to be already part of human nature. We are able to determine what's right or wrong because we have our own intellect. For example, we follow the moral law, thou shalt not kill, not just to gain more friends, but we are following this law because we know that it is wrong to kill and there is a consequence to be faced in doing this.
Audio Jungle.
Hoy, Lord, pumili ka nga ng suka sa tindahan ni Ate Bebang.
Ba yan? Saglit lang naman eh. Hindi naman makapaghintay. Wow!
La 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 la. Wow!
Next philosophy, the Kantian concept of human person, imperfect duty and perfect duty. Kant considered a human as autonomous, self-regulating will who is capable of making decisions. With this, Kant thinks that it comes into two, the perfect duty and the imperfect duty. Perfect duty. This is the duty where a person is obliged to do even if there's no occasion and no matter of circumstances they may face. It is in which a person must always observe irrespective of time, place, or circumstances. It is the duty that we are obliged to meet every time. For instance, in studying, students do this because we are obliged to do it in order to have a good future. Another example is helping parents and doing the household chores. As children in our house and as a person who lives in that house, it is our duty to help each other and maintain the cleanliness of the area.
Nak, Gwen po! Pakilinis naman yung kwarto. Sige po.
There I was, an empty piece of a shell, just minding my own world without even knowing what love and life were all about. Then you came, you brought me out of the shell, you gave the world to me, and before I knew, there I was, so in love with you. You gave me a reason for my being, and I love what I'm feeling. You gave me a meaning to my life. Yes, I've gone beyond existence.
The next one is imperfect duty. This is a duty where a person is not obliged to do. It can only be acted upon if there is an occasion and it is not also required to be done. In other words, it is a duty that we should sometimes fulfill but are not required to do all the time. For instance, standing as a mother to your siblings because your parents aren't home.
Take na. Ano ba yan? Nak, Gwen! Po! Ikaw muna para sa mga kapatid mo, aalis mo na si Mama. Sige po.
Bye, Nay!
Bye mga anak.
May po. Narinig niyo naman sinabi ni Mama, di ba? Kain muna kayo. After niyo kumain, mag-toothbrush, tapos maligo, tapos matulog. Okay? Wala ako ng pagkain.
Another example is getting a job at a younger age to help your parents.
Maalis na ako.
Oo, Nak. Sigurado ka na ba talaga dyan? Grade 12 ka pa lang, magtatrabaho ka na.
Kailangan na natin eh. Ang hirap ng buhay.
Guys, mas maganda pa naman sana may college diploma. Mas makakahanap ka ng magandang trabaho.
And last but not the least, tutoring a friend if she needs your help.
Hello, te. Gets mo yung lesson sa accounting kahapon? Hindi ako magpaturo.
Hello, te. Accounting ba? O, sige, sige. Dito na lang natin pag-aralan sa bahay. Punta ka na lang dito bukas. Mga night, dito sa bahay. Sige. Bye-bye.
Okay, sige. See you. Thank you.
Inya?
Uy, Karina. Tara, pasok. And that is all for Immanuel Kant's philosophy and life.
Next episode, we will talk about Jeremy Bentham and his philosophy of utilitarianism.
Once again, this is Philosophy Knows!
Philosophy knows.
Okay na ba yan?
Go. Good day, people. Ay, naku. Good day, people. Okay, ulit. We talk about Gabriel Marcel and the interest of just living with that. Today, we will talk about...
Then, pancit canton.
Kasama ko po ngayon si Mina. Mina, ano masabi mo? Masarap ba dito sa KFC? Masarap, pero mas masarap na. Grabe! Andito na po, kasama natin si Bright, Iwana, tsaka si The Two, Karina. Ano masabi niyo sa nangyari ngayong araw?
Mainit?
Swerte ba natin?
Ay, oo.
Gano? Sino kita? Kita ba kayo dito? Kayong dalawa?
Kita siya.
Ayun, maaari mo bang ikwento kung anong nangyari ngayon sa atin? Maaari mo bang ikwento?
Yung ano?
Salamin, nangyari din sa atin sa